It was extremely traumatic, extremely shocking. A society of complete chaos, rampant crime.
Can you unpack for us why, contrary to what we might expect, the anti-democratic Putin actually enjoys not perhaps popularity, but amazingly strong support among many Russians?
Well, I was probably going to begin my answer by asking you a question. What do you think of when I say the word democracy?
People who are, in the end, able to dictate to government what it is that they want and to remove them peacefully if they don't deliver.
And with that
the
comes
point of a pencil, not
prosperity,
a gun.
stability, security, and many other things.
Whilst people remain true to the ideals of democracy and understand its foundations.
Quite.
But only while.
Well, we can get into that conversation separately, but if we stick with the answer to your initial question is, when you think of democracy, you think about the ability to remove a leader peacefully, transition of power, security, stability, and prosperity. That's why we all think democracy is great. If you say democracy to a Russian person, well, you've got to look at our history. We've never had democracy. Russia has never had. The first mention historically of Russia is 882. So 1200 years ago, a long time ago. In that entire period, there's never been a single democratic transition of power. Ever. The only time Russia experimented with quote-unquote democracy, and for people listening, I'm using quotation marks, was the period between 1991 and 1999, when Vladimir Putin becomes prime minister and eventually president. That period is probably one of the most traumatic periods in the history of anyone alive in Russia today. It was a time in which you went from a poor and unfree society, which was the Soviet Union, in which most people didn't really know how poor and how unfree they were, to a society of complete chaos, rampant crime. You went from, you were a university professor with a respectable job, and today and tomorrow, and I mean tomorrow, you were selling your belongings in the street. Your children who were in school and doing well, and all they needed to do was get the right grades and go to the right university, and then they would have a career. It wouldn't be a great career, but it would be one that their life would be okay. Suddenly, your son was shipped off to fight in Chechnya, which you'd never heard of before, and your daughter was a prostitute. Because that was how quickly the society changed. I'm not saying that was every single person's experience, but we all knew somebody. We all knew somebody a woman who'd fallen prey to the slave trade, or a person who, lost a son in Chechnya, or was wounded, or was sent to the military, or someone who ended up going from being wealthy to being in extreme poverty, people who drank themselves to death, people who took drugs and overdosed on drugs. And the thing that was most important about that, it was through no fault of your own. The society collapsed around you, and everything you'd worked for, all your savings, gone. Overnight, gone. Think about that. Think how shocking that is to people.
It's very hard to come to grips with.
It's hard to imagine. People will listen to this and go, oh, but you can't imagine it. Everything in your life, think about your life now, your family, your friends, your finances, how much money you have, your job, all of that gone through no fault of your own. You've done nothing wrong. But the society has collapsed, and suddenly it's chaos. And you are not prepared for this market capitalist society. You were told all your life, be a good Soviet citizen, go to school, go to university, do your job, do what you're told. And you did, and you had a decent life. And suddenly all of that's over, right? It was extremely traumatic, extremely shocking. And Vladimir Putin is widely seen in Russia as the person who ended that chaos. He comes in, he ends the war in Chechnya, he deals with the threat of terrorism. He stabilizes the country economically, mainly because oil prices are extremely high. And so he's able to share some of that wealth with the people. And so, yes, of course, and also importantly as well, he stabilizes the country by nationalizing the crime and corruption. Crime and corruption doesn't end, it just becomes controlled. And it is exercised through the state. He is the person who is the chief oligarch, and he has other oligarchs under him who are all appointed. They're all appointed. There is no such thing as an independent, there is no real private property at that level in Russia. If you're a billionaire, you're not really a billionaire. You're a billionaire as long as you are faithful to the regime, right? So it's controlled. That rampant sort of capitalism, exploitative capitalism that we saw in the 90s is over in Russia. It's controlled, it's nationalized. So he's widely seen as having brought stability. And the worst of it is, John, is that this layers on top Russian history, in which every time there's been instability of some kind, or almost every time, what happens is a foreign invasion, some kind of deep social discord, strife, etc. There's a period in Russian history called times of trouble. And this is the thing every child is taught about at school, and this was the time the Poles and the Lithuanians, whoever it was, came and took over our country and humiliated us, and we, this great people, were under the boot, and before that we were under the Mongols. And Russian history is all about these periods of chaos and instability in which some external force comes in and ruins us. And all it takes is a strong leader who's going to come in, stabilize things, and take control. So if the only thing in your mind when you hear the word democracy is the 1990s, why on earth would you want to go back there? Suddenly, your son was shipped off to fight in Chechnya, which you'd never heard of before, and your daughter was a prostitute. Because that was how quickly the society changed.